Aaron always picks the cutest pictures, you know? I think last year he chose a red panda as our patron animal for this service. It's always an honor for me to be able to participate in a Blessing of the Animals service with all of you, with our animal companions. Now, I want to dispel a little bit of a rumor that's crept in, okay? So for those of you who want the inside track on some tea, here it goes. I have a real hot take, and that's animals are pretty awesome. I don't have a pet. And I feel like when you don't have a pet, you have to go out of your way to explain you still like animals. You know what I mean? Anybody here not have a pet? You know what, Jan, do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we don't yeah, Brio doesn't have any pets, but he loves animals. I grew up I grew up with lots and lots of animals. I was actually just mentioning to Travis, as I was setting up for the service, I was reflecting on the role that some of the pets that I grew up with had in shaping me into the person I am now. You know, I think about the humans plenty, but I don't always think about the pets of long ago. The dog that we had, we had this sweet Doberman that scared the bejeebus out of our neighbors. But when I lived in a tumultuous household over in New Jersey, Bruno was my buddy, you know. Bruno took care of me, and Bruno was my confidant. And I think, as erratic a person as I can be, I would have been more so without Bruno. So I'm thankful for the Brunos I grew up with. And that's the thing. That's the thing about us humans. We get very egocentric even as a species. Sometimes we need these reminders that there are other beings beside ourselves. And that's part of why I'm grateful for texts like this that was just read by Lori a moment ago. Now, we have two different creation stories in the beginning of the book of Genesis, and they do not fit nicely together unless we make them fit nicely together. But they weren't intended to. They were preserved back to back, talking about two different approaches to seeing how God made the universe and made us humans and made the other creatures we share this planet with. And in the second creation story in the book of Genesis, which is the older story, we have God form a human named Adam out of the muck and the mire and the clay. Adam is the first creature. And Adam is great. Adam doesn't have a broken bone. He has no ailments to speak of. It's just him and God in this world, and things are swell, except for the fact that God sees Adam has one little tiny problem. He's alone. He's alone, and apparently the companionship of God is not enough to satiate that loneliness. So what does God do? Well, God decides I should make a bunch of creatures. So he makes one animal after another. God is just at the, I don't know, I was going to say a potter's wheel, but if that was the case, all the animals would have been bowls, right? So God pulls up his sleeves and is just getting into the clay and making one creature after another for Adam to name and to see if one could be a suitable companion, a completing companion, a companion who will satiate the deep loneliness. And wouldn't you know it, a perfect one cannot be found. And that's what leads to the final creature to be made, woman. Now, these are very different stories than what a lot of us have been taught. And I understand if you're like, this is weird, and we can talk about the weirdness afterwards. But I have a point and why I'm bringing this text up. And that point is, for many of us, it is not necessarily our fellow humans who have been the truest of companions. Yes, the humans are the ones who, get our thoughts. They can understand our struggles. But it's often the animals around us who are the most comforting and consistent presence. And I think that might be a little point that I have to quibble with our author on. You know? And at the same time, I find it immensely interesting that the community that would have read this text and the ones who would have shared this oral text, when they look at the animals, what they see are fellow creatures in the great continuum that the humans also belong to. We're all God's creatures. And we share the planet together. And we have a responsibility to one another. And that is something that doesn't necessarily go away the further you get into this text with what comes after, because the humans realize their role. It's not simply to name the animals, but it's to care for the garden in which the animals live. So, out of respect for our new attenders who may not be familiar with the rhythm of a church service, I think this is a good place for us to stop. I think it's enough for us to ponder and to chew on. And what's going to happen now in a moment is I'm going to invite you to participate in this next aspect of the service, where we get to continue on this point, where we can acknowledge this animal companion that we have with us, and we can pray out of gratitude and also out of care, concern for them. All right? So, Nikki, whenever you're ready, could you play our blessing song? And if you happen to have an animal, a pet, a fuzzy friend you'd like to bring forward, you can come down the center aisle. You could also bring your stuffies, pictures, cell phone image. We'll be happy to pray over them all.
Sparrow on the way. children say joy? How do your children say home?
My friends, I cannot begin to tell you positive emotions that just selfishly lapped up. That was wonderful. You know, there's something so special and moving about seeing the love that other people have for their creatures. It's hard. It's like when you meet somebody's children. It's just really hard not to catch the love from them for their kids. You know what I mean? So thank you. Thank you for sharing in that experience.